Welcome to the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religions webinar series. I'm Dirk Ficke. I serve as Executive Director for the Council. At the end of the talk today, we'll have time to take questions from our listeners. So at any point during the webinar, please type your questions into the box on the screen. I'm very excited about today's webinar. We're going to learn of 10 responses to the rising hate in the U.S., and we're featuring Imam Dr. Abdul Malik Mujahid. Imam Mujahid is currently chair of the board of the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religions. He is president of Sound Vision Foundation, which runs the daily program Radio on Islam, and he is the former chairperson of the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago. Dr. Mujahid has written extensively on religion, public policy, and applied aspects of Islamic living. Welcome, Malik.
Welcome. Peace be with you. Salam. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. A very good response, not only from all over the U.S., but also throughout the world. That is welcome, considering it is Parliament of World Religions, but at the same time it poses a small problem for a presenter whose title is 10 strategies to respond to the rising hate in the U.S. So when I saw the registration list, I thought, wow, how should I modify so it could be beneficial to all? And when we go on these strategies, of course, you will think, adjust to your own situation where you are based in. And of course, if my points are too specific to the U.S., in questions, you can ask further to elaborate, and I'll do that for you. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Reverend Dirk Ficke, for introduction and the Parliament for starting and continuing this webinar series, which allows us to connect with some of those tens of thousands of people who actually come to the Parliament event, which is the summit of the people who'd like to change the world by working with each other. So 10 strategies to respond to the rising hate in the U.S. I will take you fast on some of the elements of that hate. Every day we hear some incident. Very heavy on my mind is what happened in Cairo just a couple of days ago. But when I prepared this, that day I had received the day after the Norway killing of 77 persons, which was based on hate. I received this message. Somebody calling himself Paul, I wish he has chosen some other name. The only problem with the Norway attacks is that he did not target the cockroach swine Muslim. I hope we can rectify that with the next attack in the U.S. Someday. The killer of Norway was nourished by hate in the U.S. by Robert Spencer's writings and other leading Islamophobes. So, that's how the hate in the global village, unfortunately, is connected. There is a, hate in the U.S., and then there is anti-Americanism in many parts of the world, which continue to feed off each other. So, as hate and passion around hate feeds off at each other, it is important that people of faith enhance and increase the movement of love and working with their neighbors against hate. So understanding the challenge in America, although it is quite known and said about Islamophobia, which is extremely rising form and probably most prominent, I personally tend to believe that something called Mexican hunting, which some hate people use that term, is much more brutal. 81% of Latinos feel discriminated against, as almost 500,000 undocumented workers were deported. When you're looking for people to deport, you sometimes get the citizens and the green card holder, people with rights, And as you see, that hate towards Latino have moved from Minutemen, which used to be a U.S. Group, just a hate group against, and then from them it has gone to anti-immigration laws, which are essentially based on racial profiling. So 58 anti-immigrant laws were passed in 2010, and 219 have been passed in the last 5 years. Now recently Alabama laws has passed, which was supposed to go in effect September 1st. Thanks to some good judges, it has been put on hold until they hear that. And that will not allow the church people to provide simple services to officiate a wedding and baptize someone and give somebody a ride, or give someone actually food. And ironically, it asks citizens to file a lawsuit on the police and the court officials if they don't fully enforce these hateful laws. It has increased class tensions in our country, in the United States, and probably the same thing is happening in other rising nations. 2.6 million people slipped into poverty in the US just in last 1 year. And people now who are living under the official poverty line are 46 million. It is the highest since the census started keeping the numbers, that is in last 52 years. Wisconsin and Ohio laws eliminate bargaining powers for public employees. 18 other states are considering that. 400 Americans have more wealth than 60% of all Americans combined, and that is by a conservative institute called Cato. And when it comes to Islamophobia, it is well established and well known. Majority of the Muslims have faced repeated discrimination and different things. 25 states now have 49 anti-Muslim laws pending. Some of them will criminalize Muslim wedding and things like that. 700,000 Muslims have been interviewed by FBI. So a mix of Islamophobia, a lethal mix of public policy, media frenzy, and unchecked so-called religious leaders have given environment of fear in which even imams who are working with law enforcement to make sure that there is no terrorist who pops up in the community are even spied at. 30,000 Muslims have been detained. Mosques, including Chicago, has been checked for nuclear bombs. I wish federal government spent some money on checking our bathrooms in some of the mosques in the state. Wages of Muslims have gone down by 10% since 9/11. It hasn't started going back way before the economy went back. And 28% of Muslim students in public schools reported being stopped by police as a result of profiling, and 7% says they have been physically assaulted. That's the Columbia University research. So the points for our consideration is that with demographic shifts in which diversity in America is going to be as American as apple pie, some people are showing fear. While this diversity essentially is going to lead America as we compete for investment, market share, and other things in the global village. So economic blows, rise of the others, other nation rising, ongoing wars, they all formulate a cycle of hate, fear, and extremism. It looks like that will continue because of the current economic situation and demographics. So means that if this thing we are concerned that it might continue, it means that people of goodness and people of faith and interfaith need to really pay attention to this. The only serious debate, unfortunately, about this hate was when a congresswoman was shot in Arizona. But unfortunately, discussion lasted just a couple of days. Even Congress, despite my request, I wrote an article on this calling for a congressional hearing on the rising hate in the country. but which all indicators show it is rising. They did not do that. So it is important, if you think that these variables which I have counted will continue, demographic shifts and economic blues and rise of the others, and it is so, then hate might continue. We pray otherwise, but we must prepare for the worst. So there is urgent need for the strengthening of the mediating energies in the society. And World Parliament of Religion, which leads the interfaith movement in the world, is one such mediating force in the society. So here I would say move directly towards the strategies. I have already taken 10 minutes on this. Think, pray, and plan, and think again. Strategy number 1. Faith is power. In America especially, and many other parts of the world, America is a very religious country. 43% of Americans report that they attend religious services, mosques, synagogues, churches, temples on the weekly basis. And those who say once a month, that number is even higher. Actually, close to 20% plus people say they attend places of worship once or twice a day. So it's a quite religious country. And the same is true for many other countries, not as much about Western Europe or Canada and Australia. Their percentages are close to 10–15%. But places like that, these people are going there. They're connected with the system. And in that sense, strategy number 1 is capitalize on people of goodness, because many of these faith traditions, almost all of them, have teachings of neighborly relations, responsibility towards neighbor, and they have religious texts, and they serve. Many of these organizations, faith organizations, are service organizations. When in the US, a major Hurricane Katrina struck, the government was slow to arrive. It was people in the neighborhood, churches and the mosque and the synagogues who were the first responders. Actually in Houston, Muslims and other different Christian denomination and people of faith will take up a day to feed 28,000 people on the daily basis for weeks to come. That is extraordinary power. So I think we need to have some faith in the power of faith, if not a whole lot, and use the pulpit to not only talk about fear, anger, and extremism, but also facilitate neighborhood dialogue and bridge building among whoever is in conflict in that neighborhood. It can teach the diversity as a strength for our future and for the globalized world. For those of you who are coming from different parts of the world, it is not just applicable here. The Parliament gave an award just 2 years ago to someone who has done the same thing in Africa and leading by example. Strategy number 2, develop a plan to fight the new hate. You know, we need to take hate seriously. Sometimes we sit on the coffee table and people of goodness, they talk nice and we all agree, but nothing goes beyond talking. The reason it does not go beyond talking is because we are taking our own conclusions lightly. It is important to develop a plan. So audit your library. Double check what messages your newsletter has. What does your website say about it? Is it linked with the material which is prepared by people against hate? Can you develop some material? If many of the churches and synagogues and mosques already have programs and the material, you need to put that material out there and share with other people, because your experience will teach you and your neighboring organizations will learn from what you are doing. And this, you know, will become a movement in itself. Adopt a formal document condemning new racism by equating it to existing one. Many people know anti-Semitism is bad. Many people know racism against African American is bad because we have been fighting this racism for a while. What people do not know is the new form of racism towards the Latinos and towards Muslim community, or in other countries towards Christians or Jews or wherever you are against. So develop a family awareness. So we need to personalize not only the organizational plan, but we need to have a family plan. We, in our family circle, we need to think. My family runs on a sort of a consultation model. We're sort of horizontal type of family. You can Google me, Malik Mujahid, with term which we use in the Muslim community. I like you to develop a family. Family is a powerful unit. And that unit need to be aware of it. That unit need to be developed in a way that we are fighting hate. And for your organization or church or civic group, form a committee whose focus, even if there is no money, at least some people will be in charge of thinking and talking about it. Strategy number 3, speak up. You know, silence is the #1 enemy of goodness throughout the world. And when one person speaks up, things started changing for the good. So it is important that we don't remain silent. If we're silent, a lot of people will think it is acceptable. It's okay to be hateful. No, it is not. It is important, say in America, a major Christian leader, Franklin Graham, when he demonizes Islam, it's a wicked religion. Some of the people here and there spoke, but it never became a major statement of disassociating, condemning, and asking him to take it back. Expose biased media like Fox and Obsession. There is a research out there. The people who watch Fox are more likely to hate minorities. And I was shocked and surprised that somebody has gone out and spent money on it to figure it, to prove it, although it's so clear. So it is important to speak up within the congregation, within community, within your families about what is out there. Dr. King and Gandhi, the people we love and care throughout the world, they were not known for their silence. It is important to speak up. And speaking need to turn into coalition of goodness with congregations among Christians and Jews and Muslims, within schools, coalition of different race groups, and within clubs and other civic groups. And it is important the people who are nice, they are not just nice the way they dress, the way they look, but they need to be nice in terms of developing their communication skills. Because we are small group, but trust me, majority of people of all faith are against hate. But if some of us build on our communication skills, hey, guess what? It is good for the job as well. I give promotions to people who have good skills in communication. Strategy number 5, built on success stories. Nothing worse like success. There are so many heroes in our neighborhood, but sometimes we fail to honor them, we fail to recognize them, and sometimes it makes, I was in Karachi, and there were a few churches about 900 miles from there which were attacked and burned, and I felt like going, except that my flight was about to leave, and I said, what can I do in Chicago? I was shocked to see that several religious, Karachi is probably 99% Muslims, but several small faith groups stood up with one of the most conservative group in Karachi of Muslim group standing in defense of those. I mean, those people need to be cherished. Those people need to be honored throughout the world, and including in our neighborhood. Part 51 controversy in New York, they were all faith groups who stood up against the hate group. And that is something to be celebrated, and those people respected, honored. Similarly, Chicago Synagogue, there were, one of our trustees received the news that there's a hate group coming from out of town, busing people in and demonstrating. And people who rushed to it to defend, they made that program that evening more successful because there are so many people of goodness who would otherwise would not have attended. or stood outside a synagogue defending, including myself, and I feel myself proud of doing that. Similarly, in Arab Spring, when in Cairo, Coptics worship was going on, Muslims were defending. When Muslims were praying, Coptic were defending. Of course, we are seeing the bad aspect of it, but that's where interfaith need to work and build on the success stories. And I would suggest that go on FAIR, learn from those people who have done it. Fair and accuracy in reporting, fair.org, I think. They got a lot of material there. Southern Poverty Law Center has beautiful material there, although they are slow in new form of hate. But hate is hate. Similarly, DREAM Act, just in last week in California, an act is passed despite hundreds of anti-immigrant bills. A bill is passed that children of undocumented people can go to the colleges and they can be given money to pursue their American dream. So success stories need to be highlighted in this struggle. Strategy number 4, dialogue with the champions and dialogue with the opposition. I'll move slightly faster so you have more time to discuss and have questions and whatnot. But dialogue with the champion like NAACP, they started off long time ago. In different chapters, they're sort of slowing down. Somewhere it is more active and somewhere it is more rhetoric, like less action. It is important to speak and have a conversation and a dialogue with those champions like ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, and many others, that what are you doing when it comes to hate towards Latino? And it's substantial. I'll give you one example, although it may take little time. In Georgia, a 13-year-old girl was raped, rapist was arrested, and judge let that rapist go. Guess on what charge? The 13-year-old girl was undocumented person. Southern Poverty Law Center reported on that. So they need to be encouraged, but they need to allocate more resources in addressing new form of hate, and of course we need to support them financially. Dialogue with the middle. It is the middle which, if tilts towards goodness, good goes in advance, and country changes, like our laws in the 70s started changing towards the goodness. When the people of goodness don't communicate with the middle keep watching Fox and other nonsense, and it continues to go in the direction which is harmful for the cause of love and harmony in the society. Similarly, it is important for some people to enter into dialogue with people who are causing hate, like local Tea Party. In South, there are 8 Tea Party groups with some Muslims engage them in conversation. And to my surprise, 6 of those groups stopped the hate rhetoric towards Latinos and towards Muslims. The rest of them expelled the Muslim guys who are doing the dialogue with them. But it's a victory. Dialogue with the media, because that play a very critical role in allowing hate voices the mainstream. So if you don't allow an anti-Semitic and African-American hate monger, you should not allow hate talks towards Muslims or Latinos either. Strategy number, my numbering is off. Be a good listener. Listening makes friends. So developing one-on-one relationship and sitting and listening to the other human touch is really powerful. Humanizing the neighbor, you can humanize only when you have relationship. A prayer of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has said, if you pray for someone, it increases love between you. So it is important that we pray for the other, those others which we know by name, and those others who are so other, we know them as a group. In Australia, my friend Bill Lesher, who was our chair of the parliament before me, he brought a cutting from Australia of a newspaper. They selected a number of people who have extremely negative opinion of Islam and Muslim. And then they brought 20 or so Muslims and in the same hall. And they have no books, no lectures, no theological conversation. At the end, they did a survey again. And that was the power of human touch, that majority of the people now have positive opinion of Islam and Muslim. So good listening and developing relationship is critical. Name the new hate. many people are avoiding the use of the term Islamophobia. I didn't invent the term. Actually, I didn't care for the term, but it got established. So there is a name for it. When you're talking about hate towards Muslim, that must be new. Latino hunting is not well established, but I have seen it being used. Racism against African American, anti-Semitism, we would not have been able to fight those if we have not named them. So name the hate. Race winning children. Diversity is going to be as American as apple pie. Trust me on that, or if you don't, just pick up the census projections for the future. We can fear it, scared ourselves to death, close our societies, become an unwelcoming people, or raise children who are somehow better than us in their open smiles for all people. They are not afraid of other people. So if we raise them well, they will be successful in building for the future of America. So we are good in the global village. America wants to double its export. Walmart does not bomb its customers. Our children need to know we can win through smile and better service to all instead of becoming a closed mind, fearful people who does not care for their neighbors. Interrupted. Well, this point I added when I had a meeting recently. There is a documentary film called Interrupter. I didn't know the name, except I have met those people and I have supported their cause in Chicago. I knew their act, but I didn't know the documentary. You see, many times if you think of yourself, you are sitting there and somebody who's not present is being stereotyped, spoken ill of, sometimes as a person and sometimes as a group form. It is very important to speak up. When one person speaks up, trust me, majority will go silent. Some will ask you something and other silent people will start speaking the language of love and harmony which you are speaking. But if you remain silent, trust me, there are more people who think one of those. So you are not one of them. Divert conversation against neighbors towards a war economy connection. A challenge fear-mongering. Strategy number 10, stop hate from becoming law. Being an active citizen is extremely important for those people who populate our churches and synagogues and mosques. It is very harmful when we think we just need to be smiling and doing a good dialogue with each other and we don't engage the people who are passing these laws. There are hate laws against immigrants and Latinos. There are hate laws against Muslims. There are hate laws towards working people to bargain for decent wages, which is a human right according to the Human Rights Charter of the United Nations. So it is important that we make sure that hate does not become law. How Parliament can assist. Tell others about this webinar series. More we like to have them on the applied aspect, but sometime as the next seminar is going to be, sometime it is awareness which is important before we go towards the activism. So get other people in your email list, in your neighborhood, in your mosque, in your churches to connect. So this thing spreads and more people learn. And please do sign up for the Parliament newsletter by going to the parliamentofreligions.org before you are done. Probably you are on our list. In that case, stay on it, but have other people subscribe to it. Identify and connect with allies on Peace Next or form your own group in peacenext.org. Parliament 2014 is going to be the ultimate summit of those people who believe interfaith engagement and harmony among people for social cohesion, and this is good for your heart and for your soul. You cannot have two personalities, one personality of love for God and listening about love for neighbor, and outside when we tolerate hate towards other people. We need to be one good soul who is good internally and good for all the neighborhood. Well, thank you so much for joining, and this is one of the leading person of our time We can no longer afford to worship the god of hate or bow towards the altar of retaliation. The oceans of history are made turbulent by the ever-rising tides of hate, and history is cluttered with the wreckage of nations and individuals that pursue this self-defeating path of hate. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. At this moment, as global village is coming together, it is important that people of love and neighborly relations are organized globally, because hate is not just limited to America. Hate is towards America as well in different streets of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malik, for a passionate and practical, very, very important and profound presentation here on a reality that's always been with us, but as you've pointed out eloquently and with some of the data is on the rise today. We're hearing from a number of persons who are with us on the webinar. I want to share with all of our listeners that we now have about 20 minutes for your questions. You can type your questions into the box on the screen, and a few questions have already come in, Malik. Somebody from New Jersey wants you to say a little more about how we can respond to media reports which inaccurately characterize people of other traditions and that fuel hate. Can you say a little more about how we can respond?
Media is extremely important, and I thank you for your question. I think media can inadvertently play an extremely harmful role by giving voice of hate a mainstream acceptance. Media is busy, just like you and I are busy doing 10,000 things in our life and living our life and enjoying it. So every person cannot meet, but I would say two things. Letter to the editors are read, not only by the newspaper, but they are read by more people who are reading the newspapers than the news itself. News and article are less read, but letter to the editors are more read. So write them even if they are not published. It has an influence. And this is told to me by a Pulitzer Prize winner in New York. The second thing I would say, media doesn't have time to meet everybody. But do form a delegation of your church, your mosque, or your civic group, or maybe an interfaith delegation, and document from their own stories what they have done and how they could have done the better. If you do your homework, media people are rational people, and they have good and bad people among them as well. So you will be empowering the good people in the media by doing your homework, and they will most likely will give you appointment if you go as a group and write through your organization letterhead that you like to meet with them. And once you meet them, they may suggest something. For example, I formed a group when Chicago Tribune was exceptionally bad 30 years ago here. I formed a group and we wrote letters and whatnot. A delegation of Muslim first time met. They were so afraid of meeting Muslim that they have armed guard 25 years ago escorting them from ground floor to their room. And they were so, and they relaxed in the conversation. They realized we are human beings as well. And the publisher says, why don't you keep me informed on the quarterly basis that how we improve? And so it is important that you do follow up. So develop a committee, develop content analysis of the media, target one media at a time, and trust that people do change, and pray for them as well.
Okay. Well, that's often I think all of us feel somewhat powerless or overwhelmed by the media blitz, and you shared with us some ways to be empowered about interacting with it and taking responsibility for its character. Young people, Young people are very sensitive. They're at a formative time in their lives. And growing up is a time to form certain attitudes about people who are different. It's also a time when feeling expressions of hate can be so damaging to young people. We have somebody from Virginia asking, how can we develop the capacity of teachers to help students deal with hate issues when they encounter them?
Thanks to the civil rights movement, some of that material has been developed and it is available in the libraries. There are lesson plans available on internet as well as there. There is a particular website, I wish I had written it somewhere, I think tolerance.com or somewhere. There is a website where there is a material and lesson plans available for teachers. But teachers are human beings like media. Not all teachers are winning the award of being the best teacher out there. So it is important for parents to engage teachers and whether it's any form of hate. It is important to engage teachers. Teachers are human beings. They're going through their life cycles and whatnot. When you talk to them, trusting fully well that they have this, the whole forum of shaping our future, they will pay attention to. And if they are unaware of the material, you provide some of that material. Southern Poverty Law Center has some of that material available. And the only limitation with that material is that they don't address the new form of hate towards Latinos and towards Muslim and Islamophobia, and those things they have just started coming out reports, and they haven't incorporated that vocabulary and those things in the lesson plans. I think as some of you, if you are teachers, think of taking the old lesson plan and reformatting it. So new material and new vocabulary is incorporated, because it is part of the psychological theories of communication that if something is already in people's mind, for example, if children already know anti-Semitism is bad, if children already know racism is bad, it is easier for them to understand for the similar reason hate is bad towards the Latino, and stereotyping and generalizing, and hate is bad towards Muslim as well. So I think teachers, whether you have a dedicated lesson plan or within the history lesson talking about civil rights movement, talking about the Black History Month, talking during the some other types of occasion you can incorporate along with the festivals of different people, so that provides opportunity for children to know each other. And pay special attention to minority children. They're going through a lot. As soon as Alabama laws pass, 25% of Latino children, all Latino children, stop going to school. Although that law from September 1 was supposed to be implemented, it is not implemented, but children stop going to school. So it is important if one or two children, sometimes they even don't say. Muslim children, 30% of them try to hide their name if they're Muslim sounding, or try to hide the fact they're Muslim because of that pressure. So teachers can play a beautiful role outside the lesson plan in facilitating a proper conversation between children. When my son, who is not from Iraq or has anything to do with Saddam Hussein, was being called Saddam Hussein and whatnot, and his clothes were thrown into the urine and whatnot, there were some good teachers who have some good students who are working with him without my knowledge of what's happening. So teachers play a major role in shaping our future, and we need to present the diversity as coming up for our children. When these children will be graduating, this diversity will be in place. Right now, 45% of all children under the age of 5 are children of color. It's already happening, and you are probably seeing in your classroom. So you are shaping the future. I think you will find good ways, but some material is available indeed on the websites.
Another listener has asked the question, would it be helpful if the Muslim community made more public statements decrying terrorism and suicide bombings? And are they reluctant to do so because they fear that Islamic extremists might target them?
Actually, question sometimes is, points to the reality which is out there. This is a good question. A large number of people think Muslims haven't condemned terrorism. Well, trust me, my brothers and sisters online, condemning terrorism has become the sixth pillar of Islam. We do it 10 times a day. But are you listening? That's the issue. For media, it's no longer in news that anybody is just condemning it 10 times a day. They did it, they publish it, you can go back and check it out. It happens all the time. What I'm encouraging Muslim community to do is, instead of just simply condemning terrorism, they see the whole set. The wars, terrorism, and hate. These are connected phenomena. Robert Pape is a scholar at the University of Chicago. 80% of his funding, well, I'm not sure exactly 80%, but major funding came from the Defense Department. And he has studied 100% cases of terrorism in the world. And he says the terrorism was not even invented by Muslims. The suicide terrorism actually started by Hindu Tamils against the Buddhists in Sri Lanka. And he says it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with real or perceived occupation of people. There used to be no suicide bombing in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iraq until occupation began. So I invite you to remain concerned about condemnation of terrorism, but speed up condemning war, hate, and terrorism as a one set. And that's what I'm encouraging imams to do. 100 imams have New York have come out with a statement of condemning all three together. So we understand that condemning terrorism itself is not seems to be taking us anywhere unless we condemn all sort of violence and all sort of hate, whether it's organized by the government or groups like Al-Qaeda and whatnot. And trust me, you can find my statement of condemnation of war and terrorism, hate all around.
How do we, somebody from Colorado is asking the question, how do we sort out hate or hate rhetoric from political discussions about conflict areas in the world? Those lining up on two sides of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Some will use anti-Semitic language in their critique, and some will use Islamophobic language in their critique. So how do we, in a more sophisticated way, how can we talk about these tough issues about conflict areas in the world and yet not let hate speech infect those conversations?
I would say 3 points. First is anti-Semitism and Islamophobia both are on the rise. And other forms of hate is on the rise. This has been documented. These things are real and these things need to be challenged directly. I think most people recognize hate speech very clearly and challenges. For example, a religious leader speaking on radio and television and repeating himself, Islam is a wicked religion, is a hate speech. But if someone is saying that, this particular religion says this thing, I like to understand why it says. It's a question and an opportunity for people to explain. Similarly, speaking on Israel and Palestine, I speak against the occupation of Palestine. So do majority of America. And American foreign policy is against the establishment of what is that called, illegal settlements. So is most of the world. But while saying that, if somebody throws a slur against Jews, that Jews do these things, that's why it happens to them, that becomes a hate speech in my eyes. That shows that you, instead of speaking to a particular policy, you are maligning people, which includes a lot of good people. How Parliament does that? When Parliament takes place, there are people speaking on the issue of Palestine and Israel. We don't duck. We talk about that. But people of love and relationship, they are talking about it. Most of the time, Palestinians are choosing Jewish partner, and sometimes Jewish people are choosing Palestinian partners to talk on those difficult and critical issues. In that way, so not only, so three things. Challenge the hate, and I trust your heart to know when hate is hate. Second thing, we need to have an open conversation on these issues. Speak up. For example, I wrote in January that Coptic Christians are neighbors. They're not instrument of somebody's foreign policy. And I reissued that just a couple of days. So it is the responsibility of the people of different faiths. So Muslims need to speak up for Jews. Jews need to speak up for Muslims. And I think then we both engage each other in a serious conversation of the issues which matters, like Israel and Palestine. I think most people are able to identify, but if you cannot speak full of hate about African American and Jews on American television like Fox, that type of conversation should not be allowed for Muslims and Latinos, as at this moment unfortunately is allowed.
Perhaps one last question here, and you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but it's a question from California about the inner and the outer, the relationship of the inner work we need to do as human beings in terms of our attitudes and perspectives, and how that relates then to how we operate in the world in terms of addressing an issue like hate. Let's conclude with some of your thoughts about the relationship of religion and spirituality in the inner life to the way in which it operates in the world.
This, I would say, is the beauty of the interfaith and interreligious movement, that it challenges and creates a whole mechanism of challenge by inspiring people to look for the concepts and ideas and the ideals within each traditions. I would say I have become more thoughtful, committed person of faith in ways which highlights the teachings which are absolutely important for our times. So when I spare my time for others, standing up with them, speaking up for them, writing for them, I'm not just writing for some abstract thing in the society. I'm doing it as a personal calling. I expect to become a better human being by doing that. And I expect to become a better Muslim in this world and expect my reward in this world and in hereafter by my Creator and your Creator. So what makes us a better person of faith? Because faith is not just worship in the form of ritual. In Quran, God addresses directly this thing, saying that, have you seen a person who denies the faith? That is the person, and then God gives two sets of characteristics. One set deals with outer, with that whether the person is connected in service to other human beings, and that's the first set. Is that person is taking care of the people? Is the person is sharing with others and encouraging others to share with others? Then the second set, that person who denies the faith, is that he is also lazy and lousy in standing up to develop that connection. So connection with the Creator and connection in service with the creation are the twin part of the faith as I'm taught. So if I am not in connection with my Lord in service, it reflects in losing my connection in service with other human beings. And if I'm not connected with the humanity and not listening and not watching and not observant, I don't think my prayers are nourished with the pain of the other, which is critical in making me a better human being for this world and being successful in pleasing my Lord. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today, Malik, with this really moving talk. We want to thank everybody that has been with us, and we want to encourage you to join us for our next webinar, which will be with Christopher Peters, who will be speaking on Native American Earth-based spirituality. In between times, between webinars, we invite you to stay connected to the interreligious movement through our email newsletter and by visiting our social network at peacenext.org. We are recording this webinar, and the recording will be available on our website within the next few days if you want to review it or encourage others to share in it. The vision of the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religions is of a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world. The mission of the Council is to cultivate harmony among the world's religious and spiritual communities, and to foster their engagement with the world and its guiding institutions in order to realize this vision. Since the first modern parliament, the Council has creatively and concretely worked to link the interreligious movement from the local to the global. And we send our thanks to all of you who are doing your own part for a better world. Once again, on behalf of the Council, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Peace. Salam.